we are ready to talk about Sampler. Okay? I'm only 1 minute and 58 seconds late.
Ooh.
Now you'll notice that there are 2 sessions back to back. Okay? So they're kind of joined but kind of separate. This one is going to be an introduction to what Sampler is and what it enables you. And then the second half is going to be more of a practical example and a demo of how it works. And we're going to break stuff, okay?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be cool, because this is how we all learn. So, my name is... No, let's not start there, because we've got all of that. First of all, thank you, sponsors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Without sponsors, we wouldn't have them. Go and talk to them. Look at that, see? This is me. My name's Rob. I talk so much that Microsoft said that I could be an MVP in cloud and data center management and also in data platform. I help people make stuff be automated, mainly in the data platform world. I wrote a book with Chrissy. Don't ever write a book. It's crazy. I like cycling. Next.
And this is me. You know this list stuff. He told you. He told you. So my name is Gael. Maybe you've heard about a conference I've been running now for a couple of years, which is called PowerShell Conference Europe. So, you know, that's not just me, but, you know. And what do I do? Well, I'm also an MVP. I don't talk as much maybe as Rob. I think that's a good thing, maybe. I don't know. But I'm a consultant, and I do mostly, you know, DevOps and then PowerShell. People know me as well a little bit for DSC. So I'm organizing the DSC community calls. Yay, machine configuration over there. Hey, Jody. So yeah, I do a lot of DSC. I talk a lot about DSC, and we've got a DSC community call every 6 weeks. That's why I put the logo of the DSC community there. And some people have been there before, and then, you know, feel free to join us. And yeah, cycling as well. Maybe not necessarily as much as you. But yeah, that's about it. And then if you want to find me, at Gael Colas pretty much on GitHub, Twitter, and everything. So,
Sampler. We have a differing view on Sampler. Now, Gael is the author, owner, maintainer, developer of Sampler and made it work. And I believe that what Sampler is a tool for you to use to enable you to make modules in a nice way. Gael says, yeah, well, really, it's kind of a streamlined version of all of these other things that people have made that we've put together. But the end result is, what it enables you to do is to have a development environment that you can keep completely clean and do your development and collaborate with each other and do all of the good DevOps-y stuff without having to code it all yourself. Right? Jeffrey Snow says, don't make what you can buy. Don't go and write the code to do stuff if other people have already done it. If you're connecting to a SQL server, don't write your own code to go and use .NET, use DBA tools, because somebody else has already written it and tested it and worked on it. Yeah? This is the same process. Don't write your own things for doing all of the CI/CD for your modules. Sampler's got you back. Next. Amazing, this, like AI, look.
it doesn't. You know, I was thinking something, Rob.
Yes, mate.
Say something?
Something.
No, because earlier they were like just going like a tennis match. That was kind of funny to watch from here. They were just going back and forth. That's why I stopped.
Should we do it again? So what we do is we make use of some community modules. Which community modules, Gael?
There's a lot of community modules from the DSC community. There's about 90 repositories, but not only.
So it enables you to have a nice, clean environment to do your development. I'm having too much fun.
Yes.
Yeah, but you can read the thing. Yeah, it's all about deployment. It's about making sure that your module goes through. Go on, everybody.
Yeah, it's really a pipeline. So the idea is to implement a pipeline. So then you always have dependencies, and there's always this problem where there's too many dependencies to manage. You know, the world is a messy place. That's the thing where you have a module you work on, and then you need some dependencies, but you have another module then it's other dependencies. That's the kind of messy world we have, but you can't really install the things because maybe there will be conflicts and things like that. So that's what we're trying to solve. What?
It's okay. You don't need to watch that.
Okay. I can't see him. So.
The thing with Sampler is it's all controlled by a build.yaml file, and you call it with a build PS1 script. So you say build PS1, and I'll use the tasks. In this case, it's build. This means you can use it at the command line, but it also means that you can use it in whatever CI/CD runner that you use. Gael likes to use Azure DevOps. I'm obviously one of the cool kids because I needed to use it in GitHub, so I've got GitHub Actions, but it is also in use in GitLab, Jenkins,
GitLab CI, Jenkins,
doesn't
all
matter.
of this. Yeah.
Just PowerShell script, yeah.
The question then is how much integration you want to have, and then the one that you probably have to do the last mile if you have something that we don't support already.
And what you can see on the screen in the YAML is spacers, because spacers are important in YAML, never forget this. But also that we have a build workflow that says when you want to do build, I want to do in the local directory build test. And if I'm going to do a build, what I'm going to do is a build module builder, because Gael is great at naming things, and then a build nested modules module builder, and then a create changelog release output. Yeah, so you can see each one of these are ticked in different tasks. These are just the ones that are there. You can have anything else that you want. Gael, tell us about testing.
Just before we go there, does anyone use InvokeBuild? InvokeBuild is a task runner. Sake, maybe you know. Sake is the other task runner in PowerShell. So a task runner is you define a task, and then you can execute the task by saying, hey, I want this task or this other task. So the YAML only is an interface to some extent to InvokeBuild. So you say you write your task for InvokeBuild, and we just kind of automatically load it in, and then you can define it in the YAML and just say, well, when I call the default task, it will run the build and the test, which will run everything within build and everything within test. So that's the idea. It's just something easier to manage your workflow because you define it once and then you can just call it whenever you want.
Let's go next.
What is that?
That looks like the results of a GitHub action to deploy. At a guess, I think I'm deploying DBHX. Okay, and if we look at all of the actions that we've got here, this has all come from me calling build.ps1/build, and probably /test. Yeah. And it has gone, oh, okay, let's package up our module. So we've got one artifact. That's going to have all of my dependencies. DBHX requires DBA tools. It requires PS framework, requires some other bits and bobs. Those all get packaged up into a nice bundle. This is my release that's available. Right now, I need to make sure that it works cross-platform. So I'm going to put it on Linux. I'm going to test it on a Windows machine. I'm going to test it on a Windows machine running PowerShell 7. I'm going to check it on Mac OS. And then I can deploy my module and I can publish the code coverage. And when I was working collaboratively with Jess on DBHX, and she's like, what do we do? And I'm like, push it to main. She said, what do you mean, push it to main? I'm like, push it to main. She said, but. I'm like, well, if the tests pass, we're happy. There's a few thousand tests. She said, what it's going to do then is it's going to go forward, it's going to deploy the module to the PowerShell gallery and create a GitHub release. She said, but it's not ready. And I'm like, yeah. But it's okay because we haven't tagged it as a main release. This is going to automatically get tagged as a preview and get the next Semver version up. All I wrote was build.ps1 task build test. All of the rest of it is done for me. How beautiful is that? It's cool.
So how did you create DBHX? What's DBHX? It's a module, right? But how did you build it?
So DBHX is a framework for making sure that your SQL Server instances are in the state that you expect them to be. And we do that by giving a framework of pester tests. Now, most people don't know how to write themselves a great big framework of pester tests. So we enable them to be able to customize that, put in parameters, set limits for when things are going to fail, so that whatever environment they're on, they can create their own level of tests. So to enable that to run as a DBA, you want to be very sure that it's doing exactly what you want. So we'll talk a lot more about how we do that tomorrow morning with Jess. Worse with my hand on it. Go on.
So do you understand that you want to write a module? You have to start writing your functions, and then when you have your functions, if you put them into a PSM1, you can create your module like this. Once you have your module, if you do publish-module, you can publish it to your private gallery or to the public PowerShell gallery. Basically, what we've done and what we've automated that you can see here is this is done for you in GitHub Actions. It takes your functions that you wrote in a certain way, it puts them together into your PSM1. It runs the test over the module that you just built. If there's anything that doesn't work the way you expected because the pester tests failed, then it will stop and prevent you from doing something that you don't want to happen. And if it works, it just does it. It just publishes that to the PowerShell gallery.
Now, I would say that there's actually even more than that. Because Gael's taken it from you have made some changes and you've pushed them ready to be deployed. I'll take you back 2 steps. Okay? So another part of this build is it can enable me to clean. We saw that. So I can clean my development environment. I can run this in my Visual Studio Code in a dev container. I can now clean my development environment so that I am only working on something that I completely control. And then as I do my development, and I can run my tests, and I can see what works, and I can do all of this locally. And this is DBA check, so we're talking about a SQL instance. So I have 3 SQL Server containers that we're running, that we have control of what users and logins and jobs and everything that we're checking is on. And this means that I can also give Jess the code, I can give Claudia the code, I can give any of you the code, and say, run that, because when you run the build, it's going to pull down those 3 containers at the version defined in the dev container. It's going to clean the environment. We're going to then start with making sure we've got all of our dependencies that we need. It's going to install all of those for you. Not in a place that's going to disturb anything that you do anywhere else, just locally for this sampler instance, if you like. Then I can start writing my code, test my code, write my code. Does it do what I want? Oh, no, I've completely broken it. Right, that's all right. Throw that away. Do a build again. Great, clean. We're back to where we were.
Sure.
Then we get to a point where I'm happy. Then I can push my commits. And then we get all of those things that Gael said.
Shall we do a quick demo?
Let's do a demo.
Let's do a demo then.
Feels like demo time.
Yeah. It's going to be more clear. All right, let's try at least, because we.
And actually, just before we do a demo, you were on the questions slide, yeah?
Was I? Yes, I was.
Yes. So
sorry.
Let's give some chance for some interaction and say, are there any questions?
Could you say a little bit more about what you mean by cleaning your environment?
So the question is, could you say some more about what you mean by cleaning your environment? Okay, so if I am developing my code that is going to be interacting with some infrastructure, in this case, I'm talking about DBA checks and I'm talking about SQL Server instance, but it could be anything, then my test environment might also be the place where I demo to clients or where I demo at conferences. And as I keep playing with it and doing things, I'm going to change how that environment is, which means that when I develop my code to work against that now changed environment, might introduce some bugs that I didn't really need to go chasing. Whereas if I can start completely clean in an environment that I totally control, okay, I bring down these 3 containers. So these container images are defined exactly how I want them. I know what they are. I know how I'm going to interact with them. My development environment is controlled because I have defined all of the dependencies. I've made sure that I've got all of the versions of the modules that I have dependencies upon. In my work, outside of this sampler environment, I can have different versions of those modules. I can not have some of the modules, and it doesn't matter. Yeah. Because inside this sampler one, I'm starting completely from scratch, like building a new VM every time, like building a new container every time. Does that make sense? Exactly that. Yeah, I'm taking it back to a known state. Perfect.
So
yes, boss.
For those familiar with Python, Python has something called virtual environments, and that's similar to this, where you just don't want to pollute the environment you do your development in. So you just say, okay, let's go back. I want this to not be polluted by the environment. So if you develop a module and then you have installed some other modules, you never know which one's going to be loaded because of the auto load of PowerShell. So if you have something installed and it's already there, you don't really control which one's going to be loaded. So that could be one of the issues. So if you're developing with different dependencies, different ones going to be loaded, as an example.
The other example is it's brilliant for collaboration. Because I know that if you pick up that Devon container, you're going to have exactly the same environment. No matter what your machine is, no matter any of those things, it's going to be completely controlled. There is another question over there. Yes, boss?
I have two questions. One is, does it support the VSCode tasks? Like build, I use Turbo, and then there, if you press the task, then you can do build or test.
So the question was, does it support the VS Code tasks? So the VS Code tasks basically is just executing a script. So if you define in your JSON the tasks.json in the VS Code subfolder of your environment, you can define, okay, you can run this command. Because the entry point is always the build.ps1 we talked about earlier, you can define any task running any of the things that we defined in the YAML earlier. So you can say, if I ask you to run this task, run this build with no parameters or with these specific parameters. So the answer is yes.
And the second question was, Plaster could use some tender love and care. How do you handle those issues on the dependencies, like Plaster?
Like what? Sorry, I didn't catch the last.
Yeah, Plaster has produced some tender love and care on the issues that are there, and it's not always fun to edit, but how do you handle the issues on those dependencies?
So the question is because, so you already know that Sampler is like several projects. It uses several projects. So I mentioned InvokeBuild, but there's also Plaster. Plaster is a templating module for PowerShell. So you define in XML how you want your new repository or your new module to look like, and then it will do that. So we provide some of those. There's limitation in Plaster. Plaster's been built, I don't know, 7 years ago or something like this.
I've used it for ages.
And then actually, I think the maintainer is Jeff Hicks. He may not be in this room, but he's in this conference.
So in this building. Yeah.
So ask the question to Jeff, but I think the problem is scalability because Plaster is based on XML files, which are a bit painful to use. But because with a sampler, we abstract away. You don't have to know Plaster. You just have to say, there's a few commands in sampler. It says, add sample module or new sample module. And then that will call Plaster. So we just abstract it away, and then we have different templates, so then it's easier to scale. I can show you in a bit. That was a long answer, but this question was specific.
Any more questions? Bless you. That noise means it's time for a demo. Can you pass me my drink? Can you pass me my drink?
Oh, sorry. We saw people. We've seen people, falling asleep. That's why. We need the wake-up call.
It's the getting warm bit, isn't it?
All right, that's my notes, so I remember, and that's okay. Is it big enough? Let's not take this one anyway.
But it's dark mode.
It's dark mode because that's just okay. I'll just show you a couple of things. I'll start from fresh just in case. False, recurse, and then which one is it? I said I will do sampler directly. All right, I'll just remove this one. So I'll start with just a git clone. Everyone can see. So there's a repository over there. I just start from fresh. There's nothing there. I just go and clone it, which is sampler. So I'm just using sampler to edit it. So you will see how it looks like. So now I just cloned it. I forgot to start it earlier, so it's going to take some time, but we'll see, because we have a plan B. So I go into Sampler, the module I just cloned, and then I open VSCode. So far, so good. I need to make it bigger, because it was closed. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. All right.
I'll ask the same question again. Should we install this update? No. Not now.
And now. So I'm in VS Code now. So this is the sampler project. Sampler project is like any other sampler project. So if you have another module using sampler, it will look the same way. Basically, we have a folder which has all the source code. So most of the time now it's called source or SRC. In this case, because sampler was the first, the chicken and egg problem, that's the same thing. But it's called sampler, but we could rename it to SRC and that would work the same way. And then we have public functions and private functions. All of these are the source. And you see there's one PSM one which is there, but basically this could be empty. It would work the same way. This file is not needed, as you can see, because a compiled version will be created. So that is not really needed.
Wait a minute. Let's slow this down a minute.
Yes.
So why do we write our functions in directories called public and private? Of course.
We want to expose some of them.
Okay, yeah, but I can do that in any way I want to. Why do we put them in their own file inside different directories? So that's easy for us to find, yeah? So it's easy for us to, when we are developing, to find. If you're DBA tools and you have over 500 files in that functions, in that public functions, and another 100 and something in the private functions, your import module takes a long time because it's got to go and grab all that. Right? So you go, oh, that's okay. What we'll do is we'll take the code from each of those files and put them inside the PSM1 file. Guess what? Sampler does that for us. We just work in the development world, in the public and the private directories. And when we go, we'll deploy, our PowerShell module that is deployed to the gallery has everything in one file, so it loads nice and quickly. It deals with whether it's public or private and exposed. That's all controlled. Yeah? So this is the simplicity of what's happening by making use of Sampler.
So while you were talking, I started the process.
I figured you would.
It takes some time to take all the dependencies going on the gallery and then pulling every module required. So basically, I just called, as we saw, the build.ps1, and I called the task no op, so then it doesn't do anything specific, but I say resolve all my dependencies. And the dependencies are defined in one file, which I'll go at the bottom, which is required modules. And I will close that in the middle. It will carry on. And you can see, if you know PSDepend, again, that's a module that was created many years ago by a rambling cookie monster. Warren, if you see us, hi. And we just say, okay, I want all of those modules to be pulled, so then I can have everything ready for my build processes and all the tasks that I have defined earlier in the YAML. And then I can specify which version I want, or I can just say, just pick the latest one, which is it's going to be the latest, not the pre-release, unless you really specify you want the pre-release.
So your question of how do we make sure that our environment is clean, this is one of these things. Yeah? Look at all of these different modules that are just straight built in. Now you can add all of your ones that you want to make use of within the thing that you're building. You're able to define all of that and know that every time that you run build.ps1 task build, you're going to get exactly what is defined in here. So it's really cool from that clean point of view, and it's really cool that Gael's enabled and put together a framework to make use of all of these other tools that we have available to us.
So one example, like we can say, like the things you can do when you manage a module, you will make change to the module, and then you need to maintain a changelog. So someone wrote a module which is changelog management, and we just use his module, and then we can manage all the changelogs using his module and make sure we do something always the same way. So then we have, categories like fixes, when it has been changed, and then we can compile this change. So then when we create a new GitHub release or a new release on the gallery, we have exactly the extract of what has changed for that release that we create. and this is created automatically.
Basically, we're all lazy.
Yes.
This makes it easier to be lazy.
This came up because the DSC community has something like 90 repositories to maintain, and then some of them started many years ago by the PowerShell team, and after that the PowerShell team and the DSC team split, and then the community was taking over some of those repositories, and they had very strong guidelines, what we call the high-quality resource modules. So the idea is, how can you enforce the same practices across 90 modules when you build them from the sources?
Don't log that off.
Yeah. Well. So that's how it came. So
do you think it's built yet? Let's have a look.
Let's have a look. So it didn't build because I said no up, just resolve the dependencies. So what happened there is it didn't install on my system. It just put them in a folder which is not in Git. So I have my required modules folder. I just pulled everything I had in the list, and everything is there. He also did something that we didn't see. Oops, wrong button. There's also my PS module path has been updated. So automatically it prepended my output on my required modules. So then if I search for any module, the first module that will be loaded are the ones either in output for the module we're building, or it will be the required modules where I just pulled all the dependencies. So if you know how the autoload works, it will look for the first module you find in the first path that you have. So we'll first look in module. If the module is there, it will load it, but if it's not there, we'll go to the second path, and if it's there, then it will load. So that's a good way for you to always load the thing that you define into this environment.
And if you run this in a dev container, then you don't worry about whether it's going to load Gael Colas documents PowerShell modules if it doesn't find something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can completely separate it out.
So now that we ran this task, which is the no up resolve dependency, but now we just want to build the module. So if I run build, oopsie.
If you show the output folder on the right.
At the same time?
Yes.
Right. That's just an error on the changelog, and that's normal because we're not making any change. We're on main. So if I look in the output folder now, I have a sampler module, which is what I just built from the sources. It already has a version, and we will get into that later, and then it has all the things required for this module. In this case, we have a PSM1, and within that PSM1, let me just close this one, we have, whoops, wrong one.
Control K, Control 0.
No, Control B, that's all right. And then what do we have in there? We have all the definitions of all, I'm sorry, I can't scroll, there we go. We have all the definitions of the individual functions in there. And now as the private, and after the privates we have all the public, and everything has been built together. So you had many functions, and now we have one PSM1. So what's the benefit of doing that?
It means that our module is going to load quicker.
Yes. And then much quicker, first of all. I think you did some experiment. Some people did some experiment, I think, with DBA tools.
Yeah, honestly, I can't remember the numbers right now because my brain is fried. But it is like from seconds to milliseconds. It was 15 seconds to 200 milliseconds. It was that sort of level of improvement that we were seeing.
So why don't we just write PSM1 files then?
Because we are developing the changes in our functions, and if you have DBA tools is something like 85,000 lines in the PSM1 file. So if I need you to go and find the right file, and then you want to go and work out which internal function's calling that, and then which internal function's calling that, and if you're doing that in 180,000 line file, it's a disaster zone.
And then if we have one function per file, as soon as you change one function, if you do a git diff, then you know which function has changed because it's a single file. So you straight away get the information on which function it was changed.
Okay.
So
hang on, is that cool? Yeah. I mean, I know it's hot and we're all sleepy and whatever, but this is a cool thing, yeah? It makes your life easy because you're all lazy, yes? Yeah, there we go.
So just now we say, okay, we just run the build. So if we run the build, what else can we do?
We could run a test because is it going to work?
Well, I'm not sure. What else can we do? So if we run that one, these are all the tasks that are being defined and available for us to run. And then it looks like you're right. There's a test task here. Why is it defined? It's here. So when we run the test, what is it going to do? It's going to do pest test, stop and fail. So if there's an error, it will fail. And then it will convert the code coverage on those things. So let's try it and then see what happens. Honestly,
hang on a minute. It's like Pester's amazing because it's now all at V5 and all of this stuff. What if I've got a really old module and I've been like all of my Pester tests for that module are in V4?
Well, in your dependencies, the required modules, you would go in there and instead of saying latest in the Pester definition, so let me go back to the required modules in the source. Here you have required modules, and probably you would go into Pester here, and instead of latest, you would say, I want the latest one available in version 4 something, but you could pin, let's say, version
4.10.1 something.
Nah, let's say this one as an example. And you could pin that one. It will load that in the module, and because we changed the PS module path, it would load the version that you have downloaded there.
That's awesome. But now when you run the build runner, I'm going to have to change a load of stuff there to make sure that I'm using Pester v4 code and not Pester v5 code to run my tests when I'm running the test sampler.
When we're running the task, the task will just see which one you have loaded, and then it will just adapt.
What do you mean it just takes care of it all for me?
But not all. You still have to write your tests. Well, we've seen that ChatGPT can do it, right?
Yeah. This is the point. Like, the thing we find interesting is the solving the problem and writing the code to do the thing that makes stuff amazing. I actually really like writing tests to see what's failing and making sure that that's all working as well. But plumbing all of this stuff together all the time, troubleshooting why it's not plumbing together, why is this not working? Oh, I've got the wrong version of Pester. Oh, I'm calling it in the wrong way. Oh, we're looking in the wrong directory. We just have it all taken care of. We spend more time building, writing, testing our code, and less time worrying about whether it's going to be deployed in the right way with the right version, etc.
So now I just run the build with the task test, and then all the tests are going through. And then if anything fails, then you will tell me, which part fails and why it failed. So what you see here, and if you're familiar with Plaster, basically because we provide some of those Plaster templates, so you can create new module just by saying, hey, create a new sample module, and then you will create the scaffolding for you with creating the files, the visual VSCode tasks. It will create those kind of things for you. It's very similar to Stucco. There's which one? There's four mains, I would say, if you include sampler. There's PS framework. Is Fred around here?
Yeah, Fred was here earlier.
Yeah, so Fred was here earlier. So there's PS framework is one of them. Stucco is one of them by Brandon. So DevBackups. And there's Press, I believe, by Justin. And Justin is not there, but Justin is around as well. So you can ask them. And I always say, there's no right or wrong one to use. This one was built very specifically for a use case, as I mentioned, which is the DSC community. And we've adapted, and the DSC community has contributed. We're lucky to have many people to contribute to that one.
It might be a silly question, but we have an internal Stucco implementation, which we tailor to our preferences. How would we do the same with Sampler? Would we fork Sampler, do our changes in our organization, and then fork that one? Or how do we start with it?
Forking is...
Gael.
Sorry, what was the question again? So the question was, what is the good way to have a custom implementation for your own use, so within your own organization? And the suggestion was, should we fork it? Forking, when you fork a module, the problem is you have to take all the changes and then remerge the changes that goes in the upstream module and then also in your downstream module, which is what you have forked in your environment. So it's very time, or either you stop taking what you have in the public repository, or it's a lot of unnecessary work.
Hey, could you close this main window?
Oh yeah, because it's distracting, isn't it?
Yeah, but also because if we could open up the Explorer, So one thing that you could actually do is make use of the sampler that is here, contribute everything to the open source side of it to make it work, but actually make use of the no, we've gone. Yeah, I would like the Explorer part of Visual Studio Code, please, and to show the tasks within some of the required modules. So you can actually. One of the things you've seen is that we had these like stop pester stop on fail. Yeah, and you think, well, where does that come from? How do we know that was there? In the required modules, we picked up. Of course, you picked the DSC resource one because I don't know anything about that. But we've got a DSC resource.test module. Within that, we've got a directory called tasks, and that has a load of tasks here that have a particular name. And those are the ones that are referenced. So maybe in your internal thing, you would have this module only. Yeah, and that would come from your internal PowerShell gallery. And then you take sampler and everything else through from your internal PowerShell gallery after it's come from the main one. Yeah, and then that's where you do all of your work. And then you'll go, oh, hang on, we found a bug in sampler. You can keep that in the open source.
So I'll give you an example for that, because it could be useful for some people at the far end over there. Hi, Jody! So if your organization has a very specific way of doing signing for your module, as an example, you could just create, the good thing with PowerShell is modules. So you could create your module that defines that specific signing task that you have. And then you will go, you create your module, you release your module in gallery, you add it in the required modules as we saw. And then you would go to the build.yaml, which you've seen a screenshot earlier, but I will open the real one if I can find it. There we go. And then from here, you will define the tasks. So let's go see the tasks. And this, you have the task, and then say, well, when I do my build, I want to add, when everything is done, you want to add my custom signing task. And that will find it if it's defined into the, you can define the modules that you want to say, hey, there's a task in this module. So you would go in the configuration. So it's there, module build tasks. You define which module you want to load, which will be in your required modules, and say, just import everything that looks like this, which is just an alias. That's the way InvokeBuild works. We don't reinvent something, we just reuse something from the community. So you can do the same with your own tasks.
Cool, huh? Yeah. Okay, so do we have any more questions of something interesting you'd like to know right now? Because otherwise, Gael will start going deep dive, which is a lot of what we're going to do in the second session, which is cool.
That last point, does that mean that your custom signing task ends up as a part of the published module at the end?
Nope.
Gael?
Sorry. I'm not in conference mode, but not that side of the conference mode. So yeah. So the question was, does that mean that when we build a module, the module will be part of that build module? No, it's not going to be part of that build module. The tasks that we create, that we use, are only there to do something to the module we are developing. So you have to create another module just to create that task and reuse it for all the projects that you have. But it's not going to be part of this one, because in this case, it's sampler. What do you want?
I need you to show the Explorer view again, but I can't do it.
Okay, Control B.
So,
And the required module for the dependent module dependencies.
So yes. So can we have this bottom? The question was: is there a difference?
Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, no, totally relevant. Everybody, is there a difference between the required modules and the dependencies for the finished published module? So where do you put the dependencies for the finished published module?
Oh, great question.
Somebody said it over there. In the manifest. Yeah. So do we have to maintain two places? Yes. But it means that if you haven't put it in the manifest and it's in your required module, it isn't going to work. And if you've put it in your required modules, but you haven't put it in the manifest, your tests are going to fail. But you're going to know that straight away, which is something that I do all the time. But
Sorry, I'm here.
Should it?
I was on the wrong
yeah, you were.
project.
So if we could have a look at the output folder. So the output folder is the one that gets deployed, except for the required modules.
So,
Okay?
so you can see that this module, sampler, depends on Plaster. It's not shipped with it, but it depends on it. And that's why in the required modules.psd1, we define, okay, to make sure that it works and it can load properly, make sure Plaster is available.
Now I'm going to take this a step further because you said deployed. And I assumed that to mean published to the gallery or in your GitHub release. That is what you meant. Okay. Because actually those dependency modules will be part of that artifact that we talked about when we were looking at a pipeline. The first thing we did was we packaged our module. That package module will include all of these dependencies because the next thing that we're going to do is do all those testing. And just like we talk about cleaning our environment so that we can collaborate together so we make sure that everybody is in the same environment, we absolutely want the same thing for when we're doing our tests. So they will be there to make sure that everything loads and works or fails as expected. But when we deploy to the gallery, to our GitHub release, as a preview or as a proper release, then it's not there. It's only the output folder.
Because it's about time, can I just show one thing that we're going to discuss later?
You can, of course. The question was, as it's about time, can I deploy the one thing that we're going to show later?
So I just ran Git version. Who's familiar with the Git version?
Some hands?
Yeah. So
5, 6 hands?
do you know, if you've published a module before, you will know that every single time that there's a change made, you need to change the version of what you can publish to your gallery. Instead of doing that, you can use a tool like Git version that will calculate the version based on the last version that was, say, tagged on the repo and some other inputs. But that's really more advanced, so maybe we'll save it for the next session.
Yeah, but it's a good point. I think perhaps the best way to say in the minute and 56 seconds we've got left is that the way that that is all controlled is via Git tagging. So you need to do a Git tag. And that means you need to do a very particular, hey, it was push to main every day.
Yes.
There we go. Bjorn's just walked past. And what it means is when you do a Git push, you need to make sure that you do it with a force for your tags. Otherwise, they all just stay locally. Push it up to GitHub, and then let the magic happen, or Azure DevOps, or wherever it might be. So we now have 15 minutes. You also have 15 minutes, and then we will come back after this one last question.
I already have a module developed, and how hard is it to migrate to Sampler?
The answer, the question was, I already have a module that I develop. How hard is it to move this into using Sampler? And that will be a great thing to learn in the second part of this.
Good one.
Okay.